The countdown to One Nation, One Election has begun. It was the Modi cabinet that has now adopted all the recommendations that were made by the former President Ram Nath Kovind led a panel that worked on One Nation, One Election. Now, this is something that Prime Minister Narendra Modi also lauded. He took to X and posted and said that this is something that is required. One Nation, One Election is an important step to make India's democracy even more vibrant. But the big question everyone is asking is, can the government actually get the proposal cleared on the floor of the parliament? The government needs 2/3 of the total MPs to give their nod for this move to actually be converted into a law. And that's the reason why the government has now tasked senior ministers. Minister Rajnath Singh, Arjun Ram Meghwal and Kiran Rijiju, all of them have been tasked to speak with the opposition parties to reach out to the opposition leaders so that a consensus can be built on this subject.
ये चुनाव जनता के दूरगामी हित में लिए जाने वाले बड़े फैसलों में बाधक थे। मैं तो एक नागरिक के नाते बहुत प्रसन्न हूं। प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी को दिल से बधाई देता हूं, हृदय से बधाई देता हूं, उनका अभिनंदन करता हूं। ऐसा बड़ा फैसला उनके नेतृत्व में ही हो सकता था और सभी राजनीतिक दलों से अपील करता हूं, इसमें राजनीति ना करें, राष्ट्रहित को राजनीति से ऊपर रखे और सब मिलकर इस फैसले का समर्थन करें।
Under the chairmanship of Honorable Prime Minister, approved to bring the bill in the Parliament, place the bill. One election, one nation. That is in the preliminary stage, with discussion with already Honorable former President of India's under leadership, just took the historic decision to implement this.
ऐतिहासिक निर्णय किया है। माननीय पूर्व राष्ट्रपति की अनुशंसा पर जो रिपोर्ट आई थी उसको एक्सेप्ट किया है। वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन देश के हित में है, वोटर्स के हित में है, खर्चा कम होगा, वोटर्स को सहूलियत होगी।
Now, there is a test that the ONOP will now have to make sure that they pass on the floor of the parliament. So that's the big question on everyone's mind. Let's just break down the numbers for you. Those people who have now said that they will support this, the number of MPs in Lok Sabha is 271. So these are the MPs who've said that if it comes to the floor of the parliament, it will be a yes from their side. The total number of the NDA strength in the Lok Sabha is 293. Now, MPs who said that they will not be supporting this, that number stands to 205 and the total strength at the moment is 203. So at the moment, it looks like it will be a little difficult for the government to make sure that they go ahead with this, because once it comes on the floor of the parliament, then 2/3 majority, that's the key figure. That's what the government needs for this proposal to actually be converted into a law. And only then can we see, maybe in the year 2029, that India can actually have simultaneous elections. The 2/3 majority, the number that they need, the magic number is 362. That's what they are looking at in the Lok Sabha. Now, if we move to the Rajya Sabha, then those people who have said that they will support it, 121 MPs. The India Alliance has 85 MPs there. The 2/3 majority needed to clear it is 164. And that's the reason precisely why the government has now tasked the top leaders from the party. They are saying that the opposition should now come on board and there should be a consensus that should be built. So that's something that the government is now looking at. The top leaders of the government, the faces that you are seeing on your screens, Arjun Ram Meghwal, Kiran Rijiju, Rajnath Singh. In fact, Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself took to X and said that this will actually become a historic move. My colleague Piyush Mishra is now joining me on the story. Piyush, we are seeing how the government very, very keen to get this passed on the floor of the parliament, and that's the reason why they are now saying that a consensus should be built and the top leaders have been asked to reach out to the opposition parties. But Piyush, we did see the moment that the nod was given from the cabinet, all the opposition parties, especially the Congress party, came down heavily on the BJP and said this is impractical.
Bill comes in the parliament, then they would certainly need a 2/3 majority. Okay, you have majority in Lok Sabha, but when the bill goes in Rajya Sabha, you need two-thirds majority, and for that you have to have the support of opposition political parties, and that is why we are now seeing how the exercise of building the consensus will also begin after this bill is tabled in Parliament. But we're also learning is that the government is going to also build a group which will certainly look into the implementation after the entire exercise is completed. The government is also looking forward to conduct the Lok Sabha elections and Assembly elections in one go, and then in the other phase, local body polls will have to be done within the 100 days of general elections. So that's the process which the government is likely to follow. But before that, consultations will have to take place, because government feels, the BJP leaders feel that there's no politics in this, there's no divisive or Hindutva agenda on which the opposition can target them, and they are also very much hopeful that various opposition political parties will come out and support one nation, one poll.
Thank you, Piyush, for giving us all those details and then putting things in perspective. In front of the Modi government, the big question now is, how will they get the one nation, one election proposal passed on the floor of the parliament? While the BJP seems like at the moment very, very confident that they will be able to pass the one nation, one election on the floor of the parliament. But just minutes after the cabinet gave the nod, it was the opposition, the top leaders of the opposition, Mamata Banerjee from the TMC, Uddhav Thackeray from Shiv Sena, UBT, Arvind Kejriwal from the Aam Aadmi Party, the top leaders of the opposition came down heavily and said that this is something which is impractical. In fact, Samajwadi Party chief Akhilesh Yadav also said that this is being done because they want to wipe out the regional parties.
Problem is, we got here for a reason. We have a parliamentary system. In 52, 57, 62, 67, we had one nation, one election. But many of the state governments elected in 67 collapsed. They were not able to sustain their majority. Therefore, the election calendar in those states changed. They collapsed at different times, so elections came at different times. In 1971, the election that was supposed to happen in 72 happened 1 year earlier. It was dissolved. You find that the calendar keeps shifting like this.
One nation, one election is not possible under the present constitution. It requires at least 5 constitution amendments. And Mr. Modi does not have the majority to put those constitution amendments in either the Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha.
There are many issues that the Government of India tries to bring in, and they ultimately take a U-turn because they're forced to do it because the numbers are not sufficient in Parliament. This is another one of those issues which is being brought up purely to divert the people's mind and attention. It is not possible with the current configuration of the Parliament for them to do so, but they have just passed it in the cabinet. They have done other U-turns. This also will be U-turn.
जो कोविड समिति की रिपोर्ट है उसके तरफ से वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन वाला जो है उन्होंने कैबिनेट अप्रूव किया. मेरी समझ में नहीं आ रहा होगा कैसे. ये प्रैक्टिकल नहीं लगता जब तक इसमें कुछ प्रावधान ना हो. जैसे कि अगर कोई सदन भंग नहीं होगा कभी, वो चलेगा अपना कार्यकाल पूरा करेगा, तब तो ये संभव है. और अगर जो है सदन भंग होंगे बीच बीच में और फिर उसका उतने बचे समय के लिए चुनाव होगा, तो फिर चुनाव तो हो ही गए, खर्चा तो वही आएगा. फिर पुलिस भी वैसी लगी वैसी खर्चा आएगा, उससे काम रोकेंगे विकास के, तो पर्पज कहाँ अचीव होगा.
Most of the opposition parties are now opposing it. Is the Shiv Sena UBT also in opposition or is going to support this particular move?
Maharashtra will see a government for 5 years as soon as the elections are announced. We'll see a government for 5 years. Haryana will see that. But what about other states which are having an election in 2027, earlier 2025? How are they going to work? How is it going to work? Let's say there's an alliance party, 3 alliance parties like in Maharashtra, they came together, then they pulled down a government, the Bharatiya Janata Party. Should we wait for an entire, 2.5 years to get over to match it with the general election? So there are various questions that are coming. And opposition, of course, yes. The idea of anything being endangered, especially electoral process endangered, is something that we will challenge and we will oppose. Anything that harms India's democracy and constitutional values, we are going to oppose it. But
हम लोग भी ये चाहते हैं कि वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन हो, लेकिन भारतीय जनता पार्टी केवल पास कर रही है. 10 सालों से वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन क्यों नहीं हो पाया? इसके लिए भारतीय जनता पार्टी पूर्ण रूप से दोषी और जिम्मेदार है. हम लोग ये चाहते हैं कि पूरे देश में एक साथ विधानसभा और लोकसभा चुनाव हों।
They must have passed the rule, but they must have gone for discussion. So maybe in their wisdom they have thought that it will be, you won't have this continuous process of election, one part of the country, other part of the country. That may be the decision, but I have no knowledge of it.
Well, we'll break it down for you. We will tell you the exact number that the government needs to make sure that in the Lok Sabha, this bill gets passed. From what we are understanding, it could be in the winter session that the government could actually table this in the parliament. The figures, as you are seeing it very clearly, the number that they need in Lok Sabha, the magic figure stands at 362. But the total number, the NDA strength at the moment is 293. So this is something that the government understands, and that's the reason why an outreach program has been started. While we are seeing on the other side, the opposition parties, the top leaders, not very comfortable with this idea.